What if the horse you choose in the next few seconds could reveal the part of yourself you've been hiding your entire life? Not the version you show the world, not the mask you wear at work or with friends, but the raw, unfiltered truth of who you are beneath everything you've been taught to be. Imagine standing in an open field at dusk. The air is thick with mist, and before you, 5 horses emerge from the fog, each one different, each one calling to something deep inside you. One is wild and untamed, its mane tangled with the wind. Another stands perfectly still, regal and composed. A third gallops in circles, restless and searching. The fourth waits in shadow, almost invisible. And the fifth seems to look directly into your soul. You don't have time to think, your hand reaches out. Your choice is instant, instinctive.
And in that single moment, you've just revealed a truth about yourself that most people spend decades trying to understand. Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, believed that our choices are never random. They are echoes from the collective unconscious, messages from the parts of ourselves we've buried, ignored, or never even knew existed. The horse you choose is not just an animal, it is a mirror, and what it reflects back will change how you see yourself forever. But here is what you need to understand before we go further. This is not just about personality types or simple traits. This goes deeper, much deeper. By the end of this video, you will discover the one psychological pattern that has been secretly controlling your relationships, your career, your fears, and your dreams. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The question is, are you ready to look?
555. Jung spent his life studying the human psyche, and he discovered something that shook the foundations of psychology. He found that beneath our conscious mind, beneath our daily thoughts and worries, there exists a vast ocean of shared human experience. He called it the collective unconscious. Within this ocean swim ancient symbols, patterns, and archetypes that have existed since the dawn of humanity. The hero, the shadow, the wise old man, the mother, and yes, the horse. In mythology, dreams, and folklore across every culture, the horse has always represented something primal: freedom, power, the untamed self, your instinct, the part of you that existed before society told you who to be. When you choose a horse instantly, without overthinking, you bypass your conscious mind. You reach directly into that ocean, and what surfaces tells a story, your story, the one you've been writing since childhood, often without even knowing it.
But why does this matter now? Why today? Because somewhere in your life, there is a door you've been standing in front of for years, and the horse you choose holds the key. Stay with me, because what comes next will make everything clear. Let's begin with the first horse, the wild one. The horse that seems to have never been touched by human hands. Its coat is dark, maybe black or deep brown, streaked with mud and rain. Its eyes are fierce, alert, untrusting. This horse does not come when called. It runs when it wants to run, stops when it chooses to stop. If you chose this horse instantly, without hesitation, then you are someone who carries a deep, almost painful need for freedom. But here is what most people don't understand about this choice. This is not about loving adventure or wanting to travel. This goes much deeper.
You chose the wild horse because somewhere in your past you felt trapped. Maybe it was a childhood where every decision was made for you. Maybe it was a relationship where you lost yourself. Maybe it was simply the suffocating weight of expectations. Parents who needed you to be something you weren't. A world that demanded you fit into boxes you were never meant to occupy. And so a part of you rebelled. Not loudly, not always visibly, but internally. That wild horse is your inner rebel, your shadow self that refuses to be tamed. Jung would call this the archetype of the outlaw, the one who breaks rules not for chaos, but for survival of the soul. But here is the shadow side, and you need to hear this. People who choose the wild horse often struggle with commitment, not because they don't care, but because any form of structure feels like a cage. You might find yourself pushing people away just when they get close. You might sabotage opportunities that require stability. You might feel restless in your own skin, always searching for the next escape. This is not weakness. This is a wound. And until you understand it, it will continue to control you. The truth is, you don't need to run anymore. The trap you once escaped no longer exists, but the part of you that learned to survive by fleeing, that part hasn't realized it yet. Now listen closely, because this next part changes everything. If you felt drawn to the wild horse, there is a question you must ask yourself. What are you really running from? Is it the world outside, or is it the fear that if you stop running, you'll have to face what's inside? Jung believed that true freedom comes not from escaping, but from integrating.
From looking at the parts of yourself you've been avoiding and saying, I see you, I understand you, you are mine. The wild horse is not your enemy, it is your power, but only when you learn to ride it instead of being thrown by it. The second horse is completely different. This one stands tall and still, its posture perfect, its coat gleaming, white or silver, catching the last light of the sun. This horse has been trained, cared for, groomed. It does not flinch, it does not run, it waits. If you chose this horse, you are someone who values control, not in a manipulative way, but in a deep psychological need for order and predictability. You are the person others rely on. You are the one who keeps everything together when the world falls apart. You are the sovereign, the ruler of your own kingdom, the one who makes the hard decisions.
But here is what nobody tells you about being this person. The cost is invisible until it's too late. You chose the regal horse because at some point in your life, chaos hurt you. Maybe your childhood was unstable. Maybe you watched someone you loved fall apart. Maybe you learned early that the only way to feel safe was to be in control. And so you built walls, not to keep people out, but to keep your own vulnerability in. You became the strong one, the dependable one, the one who never breaks. And in doing so, you buried a part of yourself so deep that you forgot it was there. Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to navigate the world. But the persona is not who you are, it is who you learned to be. And the regal horse, beautiful as it is, represents a prison of your own making. Because beneath that calm exterior, beneath that perfect posture, there is a part of you screaming to be wild, to make mistakes, to fall apart and not have to clean it up. You are exhausted, admit it. You are tired of being strong. You are tired of holding everything together. You are tired of being the one people lean on when you have no one to lean on yourself. The shadow of the regal horse is rigidity. It is the fear of losing control so intense that you never allow yourself to truly feel. You might struggle with vulnerability. You might have relationships where people say they don't really know you. You might have panic attacks when things don't go as planned. And here is the truth Jung would want you to hear. Control is an illusion. The more you grip, the more life slips through your fingers. True strength is not in holding everything together. It is in allowing yourself to fall apart and trusting that you will rebuild. The regal horse is not asking you to abandon order. It is asking you to stop being terrified of chaos. Now, the third horse is unlike the others. This one moves constantly, never settling, circling the field with restless energy. Its coat might be spotted, mixed colors, as if it cannot decide what it wants to be. If you chose this horse, you are It is in allowing yourself to fall apart and trusting that you will rebuild. The regal horse is not asking you to abandon order. It is asking you to stop being terrified of chaos. Now, the third horse is unlike the others. This one moves constantly, never settling, circling the field with restless energy. Its coat might be spotted, mixed colors, as if it cannot decide what it wants to be. If you chose this horse, you are someone searching, always searching, for meaning, for purpose, for something you cannot quite name. You are the seeker, the wanderer, the one who feels like you don't quite fit anywhere. And this is both your gift and your curse. But here is what most people are too afraid to admit about this choice. You are not searching for something outside yourself. You are searching for yourself. Somewhere along the way, you lost your sense of identity.
Maybe you were told to be so many different things that you forgot who you actually were. Maybe you adapted so much to survive that you became a chameleon, changing colors depending on who was watching. Maybe you've lived so many lives trying to please others that you've never lived your own. The restless horse is your soul crying out, trying to find its way home. Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. But for people like you, this process is painful because you don't even know where to start. You might jump from job to job, relationship to relationship, city to city, always hoping the next place will feel like home. But it never does. Because home is not a place, it is not a person, it is not an achievement. Home is the moment you stop running and say, "This is me, all of me, the good and the broken and the confused, and it is enough."
The shadow of the restless horse is distraction. You might avoid stillness because stillness means feeling, and feeling means facing the emptiness you've been running from. You might fill your life with noise, busyness, constant movement, anything to avoid the quiet voice inside asking, "Who am I really?" But that voice will not go away. It will only get louder. And the longer you ignore it, the more lost you will feel. The restless horse is not punishing you, it is guiding you. It is saying, "Stop looking out there. The answer is in here," but you have to be brave enough to stop and listen. The fourth horse stands in shadow, almost invisible in the fading light. Dark, quiet, patient. Most people don't even notice this horse at first. But if you chose it, if your eyes went directly to the one hiding in darkness, then you are someone who understands pain in a way most people never will.
You are intimate with loneliness, with grief, with the parts of life that people don't talk about at dinner parties. You are what Jung would call the carrier of shadow. And this is not a burden. This is a sacred role. People who choose the shadow horse are often empaths, healers, artists, the ones who feel everything so deeply that the world can be overwhelming. You see things others miss. You feel the sadness in a room before anyone speaks. You carry the weight of emotions that aren't even yours. And because of this, you've learned to hide, not because you're weak, but because the world is too much, too loud, too bright, and shadow is the only place you feel safe. But here is the deeper truth, and you need to understand this. You did not choose the shadow. The shadow chose you. Somewhere in your past, probably very early, you experienced something that made you believe you were too much or not enough.
Maybe you were told your sensitivity was a weakness. Maybe you were punished for feeling deeply. Maybe you learned that showing your true self led to rejection, and so you retreated. You became the observer, the quiet one, the one who blends into the background. You made yourself small so the world wouldn't hurt you anymore. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." You chose the shadow horse because you already know this. You've been doing shadow work your entire life, whether you realized it or not. Every time you faced your pain instead of numbing it, every time you sat with your grief instead of running, every time you looked at the ugliest parts of yourself and said, "You are mine too," you were doing the deepest psychological work a human can do. Most people are terrified of shadow.
You live there, and that makes you dangerous in the most beautiful way. But the shadow has a cost. People who live here often struggle to step into light. You might feel like you don't deserve happiness. You might sabotage joy when it comes because it feels unfamiliar, unsafe. You might believe that suffering is your identity, that without your pain, you are nothing. And Jung would tell you this is the final trap. The shadow is not your home. It is your teacher. You are meant to learn from it, not live in it forever. The shadow horse is asking you to integrate, to bring what you've learned in darkness into the light, to stop hiding and start showing the world what you've become because of what you've survived. The fifth and final horse is the one that looked at you, not the other way around.
This horse stands apart from the others, calm but present, aware. Its eyes are knowing. If you chose this horse, or if you felt like it chose you, then you are someone who is already walking the path of awakening. You are not at the beginning of this journey. You are somewhere in the middle, maybe closer to the end. And you chose this video not because you need answers, but because you need confirmation that you're on the right path. This horse represents the self in Jungian psychology, the integrated whole, the union of conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, the part of you that knows and has always known. People who choose this horse are often older souls, not in age, but in experience. You've already done the work. You've faced your demons, questioned your beliefs, deconstructed and rebuilt yourself multiple times. You understand that life is not about finding yourself, but creating yourself. And because of this, you carry a quiet wisdom that others sense but cannot name. But even you have a shadow, and it is the most difficult one to see. Your shadow is spiritual bypassing, the tendency to use your awareness as a way to avoid human messiness. You might intellectualize your emotions instead of feeling them. You might bypass your needs by saying you've transcended them. You might isolate yourself because you feel no one understands you. And in doing so, you deprive yourself of the connection your soul still craves. Jung warned against this. He said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But becoming requires living, not just knowing." The horse that looks back at you is not a reward. It is an invitation. It is saying, you have done the work, now do the living. You have learned the lessons, now teach them, not through words, but through presence. You have integrated your shadow, now stop being afraid of your light.
Because the final stage of individuation is not retreating into wisdom, but bringing that wisdom into messy, imperfect, beautiful human life. You are not meant to be above the world. You are meant to be deeply, fully, courageously in it. So here we are, 5 horses, 5 mirrors, 5 parts of the human experience. And whichever one you chose, know this: you are not broken, you are not wrong. You are exactly where you need to be on a journey that has been unfolding since the moment you were born. Carl Jung spent his life trying to help people see that the psyche is not something to fix, but something to understand, to befriend, to integrate. The horse you chose is not judging you, it is revealing you. And revelation is the first step toward transformation. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart.
Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. You have looked inside today. You have seen something true. Now the question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you ignore it, or will you let it change you? Will you keep running, controlling, searching, hiding? Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. You have looked inside today. You have seen something true. Now the question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you ignore it, or will you let it change you? Will you keep running, controlling, searching, hiding, or knowing from a distance? Or will you finally step fully into who you were always meant to be? The horse is waiting. The choice was never really about the horse. It was always about you. And now you know.